read two paragraphs here on Panglish, give you a bit more of a sense of what interests me about Panglish and how that kind of opens up into my interest in language more generally. Thus, the future of English is the future of language. This is not a matter of the English lexicon or rules of grammar obliterating others, as is so broadly feared. Rather, the engine of English, which roughly speaking is the mechanism of entropy, is destined to be, in a world as interconnected as ours has become, the mechanism of language generally. Academies are anachronistic and obsolete. Nearly 5 centuries ago, Sir John Cheek, who was the translator of Crucified into Crossed, made the mistake, repeated by guardians of foreign languages today, of equating linguistic borrowing with bankruptcy. As the history of English since then has demonstrated, language does not follow the rules of accounting. A better analogy is macroeconomics, in which debt is productive, though even this comparison is imperfect, since in language, supply and demand are mutually reinforcing. Language is richest when it is freely circulated.
And that's really how English has gone from the very beginning. It's been freely circulated.
Yes, English has been all that a language such as French is not. There is no there, probably could be said of English as much as of Oakland.
Is that Gertrude Stein said that of...
Indeed, yes. Well, Alice B. Toklas did in the autobiography written by Gertrude Stein, which is suitably meta for the conversation we're having.
So let's open up the discussion with just saying, is there any end point to this? I think not, right? We're just going to keep having more and more, some interesting, some fatuous words floated out in the all different communities, sports, science, everywhere, right?
Well, I think that if there is an end point, it will be the abdication of English as a language. To me, well, there are some terms that are just abominable. There was, as the author of the Jargon Watch column in Wired, every month I get email from readers who think that I make up the words and who try to make them up as well. Well, yes, that too. But one of them proposed to me the word pizzamonium as the pandemonium that ensues when more than 2 people wish to order a pizza and they must decide on the toppings. This is perhaps the single worst idea for a word I have ever heard. But with that one single exception, I invite all new language and am enthusiastic about it because I think that language with a short life and language with a long life work together to make a mosaic in which we feel like language is something fluid around us and something that is, I guess, that it is open enough to allow us to go where we want to think what we want to, and yet at the same time that it will always close in and call into question what we are doing as we have to name it and as we have to start discussing it and arguing about it.
Well, yeah, but there are some obnoxious words. I mean, I find
yes, pizzamonium.
I think pizzamonium could be a great ad campaign. Thursday, it's pizzamonium. I mean, I like it. I don't like interface. I'm interfacing with you right now. I mean, that replaces real words. That replaces I'm speaking with you or we're talking now. I'm interfacing with you. I mean, that's annoying and it's obfuscating.
Well, and of course it is taking up cycles. This is another term which also comes from the world of computing. But while these words are... What is objectionable about these words is perhaps what is objectionable about our society. Namely, that we come to think of ourselves as machines. And so the fact that these words mark that makes it...
I'm processing that right now.
Exactly. The fact that these words mark that allows us to make the observation that this is what we are doing. And therefore these words do serve an important purpose, an important function, as long as we are sufficiently self-conscious of the language that we use and the language that is used around us.
I think as long as we accept many but have the right to ridicule some, because in corporate life and in other places, language can be used to lie. Actually, these jargon-esque words can be used to cover things up that should actually be said plainly.
Indeed, and jargon has the history of jargon is really the history of covering up as much as it is the history of enlightening. What I mean is that jargon allows people in a given discipline to work very efficiently within that discipline, because once you have a certain vocabulary for what you are doing, you don't need a whole discussion every time that you want to do something new. For example, in a laboratory where you are trying to figure out how to culture new cells, you don't need to define the word culture every single time. Yet the problem is that the language becomes opaque to the degree that each guild becomes too self-sufficient. These are mutually reinforcing, and as a result, different fields, different bodies of knowledge cease to communicate with each other. And so while the ideas within those fields may become more refined, the possibility of any greater leap to be made outside of the perfection of the specific methodologies within that field becomes more and more difficult. Every field becomes entrenched, and the words become a source of comfort in that entrenchment and become a way in which people also lie to themselves.
Why don't we open it up for questions before we become too entrenched? Which is World War I reference.
Indeed. Which is the era that I come from.
Amidst the technological world, are other languages undergoing the same process that English is undergoing, for example, China and India, that are also computerized societies?
By and large, yes, insofar as they are taking on more and more English in terms of technology, and along with that, terminology more generally. So,
Are we innovating? Is English particularly prone to innovation in that way, or in their native, not so much borrowing from English words and importing them, but are there variations on Chinese characters and
It is very rare from my observation. For example, French. French may be the only language in which I know of examples, such as ordinateur for computer, where the French, being as chauvinistic as they are, will actually deconstruct the word, figure out, etymologically speaking, within the history of their language and culture, a word that would be suitable, and then the Academy more or less passes a law, and they will cut off your tongue if you say computer rather than ordinateur. But by and large, what tends to happen is that English words enter into other languages, and that, I think, has partly to do with the fact that not only is so much of the innovation taking place in the United States on account of its wealth, or what wealth it once had, but English has become the standard language of communication within the sciences and for technology as well. So as a result, anything that is new probably is being discussed by those who are doing the innovation in English. And it is a great leap to get from that to a word in another language. And when you take that together with the fact that you have this incredible fluidity, that there no longer are national boundaries as far as communication is concerned, because you have all these modes of communication that are virtual, it means that any new word that comes into existence immediately finds its way to enough people that word can sort of become entrenched, can become and can kind of get to the point that nobody would think to challenge it with another word. It would be an interesting thing for people to do so. I don't really agree with the French idea of an academy that does so, but I do think that it is productive to think about other ways of saying things, because it does, in fact, make you think about those things.
Do the French have another word for pizza?
The French have another word for pizza. I believe that we would need to ask somebody who would eat a pizza in France.
I guess they wouldn't do that.
One bit of jargon that often seems to arise is from the use of verbs as nouns and nouns as verbs. Have you come across any interesting uses of nouns as verbs or verbs as nouns in your research?
The verbing of nouns.
Verbing of nouns.
Interesting cases. That is difficult. I think that when a noun crosses... Well, first of all, verbs are much rarer than nouns as new coinages. My editor at Wired wants verbs. He wants a mix in the magazine.
You should effort that.
Indeed. And in general, the easiest way to satisfy that demand is to find a noun that has been verbed. But at the same time, I think that the act of crossover from noun to verb is perhaps significant in that technology or that science has become active rather than passive. And so probably when a noun becomes a verb, it indicates that that word is going to have some sort of long-term endurance or even power.
You know, as big as the English dictionary, I mean, I have a dictionary that's wide. I mean, you know how many words are in the English language. Why? Couldn't they find words in the English language rather than come up with these new things that don't really make any sense to me?
Because there is no, though they in particular, they is us. And because the dictionary publisher has no authority, and because by and large the dictionary publisher is not in any given laboratory, there is always going to be other forces at work. And not only that, there are going to be forces at work with various underlying motivations, one of which is marketing. That often terms come from the desire of a company. Spit is one of the most ridiculous examples of this. Spit was a term coined by Quovia for spam over internet telephony. Quovia coined this before there were any known cases of it. However, they had software that would solve the problem that didn't exist. And so they coined a term in order to create the sense that this was a threat. Quovia has since been purchased and dismantled by Cisco.
Isn't marketing a verb that was made out of or is that a gerund?
Well, to market, I market, you market, he markets, she markets.
That's a market. We went to the market.
Yes.
But marketing as a concept is not that old. I mean, it's maybe 50 years old, right? I mean, there wasn't marketing in the 1930s, was there?
I don't know.
There were sales. People sold things, and then now they market things, which is more sophisticated because selling is a little bit
That comes from
advertising. Yeah.
Associate that with
Well, there's a lot of jargon and a lot of new language that popped up because of the advertising business.
You know, when you mentioned that word crowdsourcing.
Crowdsourcing, yes.
So you mentioned all these words, there are a few words, but where did they actually come from? What is their derivation?
Well, crowdsourcing, it happens that one of the two people who coined it on the telephone while trying to come up with a headline for an article, one of them was my editor at Wired magazine. So I actually